Ashton Jeanty was recently selected with the 6th overall pick in the NFL draft. So after a dominant final year of college football, he has finally taken his talents to the Las Vegas Raiders. And I'll tell you guys what, the fans are excited about the idea that Ashton could one day become a legendary Raiders running back, kind of like Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson. But he knows he has a long way to go before he can reach that level. So for now, he's out here at minicamp doing his best to show the coaches what he can do. And they were definitely impressed, but they wanted to see what he can do in the preseason. And in one of their games, they were on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. And to start Ashton Jeanty's NFL career, he would learn that his offensive line is terrible. But that did not stop Ashton from coming up with some pretty big plays throughout the second quarter, as he proved to the coaches that he was going to be a big weapon on the ground for this offense. But at the end of this drive, they were not able to convert on third down, and the coaches had decided that they had seen enough and decided to pull him out for the rest of the game, as it ended in a 16-16 tie. And after finally getting his first NFL experience under his belt, Ashton Jeanty is ready to lock in and head into the regular season, where in his first game he will actually be facing off against another top 10 overall pick, and in this case it turns out to be the number 1 overall pick, as Cam Ward leads the Tennessee Titans into Las Vegas for the first game of the year. In his official NFL debut, Ashton Jeanty was doing a great job flipping the field for his offense. Their opening possession though would ultimately result in them getting stopped on third down, leading to the Titans taking a 7-0 lead in the second quarter. But with new quarterback Geno Smith realizing that he does not have many options, he decided that Ashton Jeanty was going to be one of them. And on this play, Ashton caught a reception before making multiple defenders miss and getting his team past the 50 once again. Eventually, Ashton would take it a step further by leading his team inside goal-to-goal territory on 3rd and 13. And on the very next play, a handoff to Ashton Jeanty went for his first touchdown of his NFL career. And the entire home crowd gets to witness a birth of a new potential star in the league. But the job was not finished in this game especially, and Ashton was saying "Shablaka" to let the Titans know that he was not done yet. They decided to keep getting Ashton the ball out of the backfield, and on this play he was wide open. He had nobody around him as he moved across the goal line for a score. And so far he's having a pretty incredible NFL debut. But with Cam Ward leading his team downfield to tie the game up with a minute left, that led to a play on 2nd and 9 with less than 30 seconds left, where Ashton Jeanty was catching the ball before saying "hey" and moving his team into field goal range with less than 20 seconds left, and doing enough to get him his first win of his NFL career, as the Las Vegas Raiders go on to win this game at the last second, 17-14. And with win number 1 under his belt already, Ashton Jeanty is feeling good. But you see, the thing is that he knows that he's still got to work hard, especially going into the next week, because this next one's a little personal to him considering who's on the other team, as in week 2, Ashton Jeanty will be leading the Las Vegas Raiders into Jacksonville, where they will be facing off against Travis Hunter and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now to start this game out, man, things were not looking good for Ashton. On the opening possession, he tried to catch this ball to pick up a first down, but Travis Hunter was there to knock it away. And the whole stadium could tell that Ashton was really frustrated, man. I mean, you could see that it was really getting to him. But on top of that, man, Travis was showing no respect, man. He was out there punching the coach. Literally scared the coach back to the sideline. Things were looking so bad early on that this guy Max Crosby was sick, bro. He couldn't even believe it. But Ashton had told himself throughout this game he was not going to let Travis get the best of him again. And going forward, he was out there actually making some pretty big plays that were made directly on Travis's side, moving the sticks multiple times for the Raiders before they eventually take him out, but they did go the rest of the way to score a touchdown. In the second half, though, the Jaguars had regained the lead, so Ashton was out there doing his best to change that, picking up a huge reception where I don't even know what he did right there, but either way, he got his team down the field. And soon they would get to a 3rd and goal where Ashton was showing complete dominance. This dude had willed his way across the goal line for a touchdown, putting up some points that now puts his team in a position to take the lead. And Ashton had no problem stunning on Travis Hunter. He had a chance to come up with a big win on the road, and that chance would increase after the Jaguars would stall out on offense, leading to the 2nd down and 1 where the Raiders have a chance to put this game away. So on this play, they hand the ball off to Ashton, and he was going crazy out there. This dude was looking like Marshawn Lynch for a second, but oh shit. Then he saw Travis, and he had to let him know exactly how he felt. So he went up to him and he said, "Ringo!" It's absolutely bulldozing over this guy Travis Hunter, and Ashton Jeanty felt good about this one. He not only picks up a little bit of revenge, but he also helps pick up the 2nd win for the Raiders on this season, as the Raiders would go on to close this game out 14-13. Just barely coming away with the win, but it could not have been done without Ashton Jeanty's 120-plus yard performance. On top of that, he had 74 yards receiving, which puts him over 200 total yards on the game. This kid was proving that he had potential to be an absolute monster in the league. And a lot of fans could tell that Ashton was a little extra motivated in their last game against the Jaguars. Unfortunately though, in their next game, the Raiders would lose against the Texans. But that was all good, because Ashton had another game where he was highly motivated. He thought the Dallas Cowboys wanted him enough to move up in the NFL draft to take him. But apparently they did not think that he was good enough to draft him. So Ashton knew going into the game against the Cowboys, he was going to show them exactly what kind of greatness they missed out on. Now, although the Raiders were down in this game, to start the second quarter, Ashton Jeanty had came up with a reception that moved his team right downfield towards the goal line. And I don't know what the coaches were thinking putting Ashton out there at receiver, but maybe they were a genius. He comes up with a receiving touchdown lined up all the way outside. And it's kind of crazy because not only do the Dallas Cowboys need a running back, but they need a receiver too. And I bet they wish they had him now, but it's too late. Because now tied at 10 in the second half, Ashton Jeanty is locked in, and he's ready to help his team take the lead. Getting them back down towards the goal line where they give the ball back to Ashton, and he comes up with another touchdown on the game, putting up a score that not only gives the Raiders the lead, but does enough to put this game away, as the Raiders would close this game out 17-10. And at this point, it felt like they had a lot of momentum on their side going forward throughout the season. Because especially with Ashton Jeanty continuing to work hard to be better, it definitely wasn't a surprise to them that they were continuing to win. But there were some wins that just meant more than others. When Ashton thinks about his time in college, he remembers that there was one team that was talked about more than his historic season as a running back. And that team was led by no other than Shedeur Sanders, who in this game Ashton Jeanty will be facing off against for the first time in his football life, as the Raiders head into Cleveland to match up against the Browns. Now to start this game, Ashton Jeanty was not messing around, man. He went out there and said, "Hey," since who got coming his way, he said, "Excuse me," and picked up a big first down for his team. At this point in the season, Ashton was already proving to be one of the more dominant running backs in the league, putting up some more points on his season here early on against the Browns, but eventually this game was going the Browns' way as they took the lead 14-7. So in the second half, like he had done throughout his rookie year so far, Ashton had to come up with some big plays that moved his team not only downfield but right towards the goal line. Where on first down with less than 2 minutes left, Ashton was leaping over for a touchdown, putting up some points that would tie this game up and eventually send it into overtime. Where after Cleveland is unable to score, it turns out that neither is Las Vegas, and this game would actually end in a tie. But it turned out to be a pretty solid performance from both the rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders and Ashton Jeanty, as he ran for over 125 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. And the Raiders would keep the train rolling into the next week against the Chargers as they come away with a big-time victory, and Ashton Jeanty actually had a game where he averaged 7.8 yards per carry. But at this point in the season, though, the Raiders know that they are about to head into the toughest part of their schedule. And it all starts with their next game, as they'll be back home to face off against the defending Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. And against Philadelphia, this game would be tied at 14-14 in the fourth quarter. But on a drive where the Raiders were able to chew off a bunch of clock and eventually get Ashton Jeanty across the goal line for a touchdown, they had done enough in the final minutes of this game to come away with the victory, as Las Vegas would close this game out 21-14. And at this point in the season, with Ashton Jeanty still improving on his skills, they felt real confident going forward throughout the season until they played the Chiefs, where in their first matchup of the year against them, it came down to an onside kick that did not go their way and resulted in a 24-17 loss. Now, a lot of people did not think this would affect the Raiders, as their next game would be on the road against Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. But ultimately, Chicago would take down the Raiders as well, winning the ball game 13-6. And they send the Raiders into the following week where they have another matchup against the Chiefs. And this time on the road against Kansas City, Ashton Jeanty was determined to come up with some big plays for his team, getting across the goal line early on for a touchdown, but by the fourth quarter, that would still be the Raiders' only touchdown. And with the Chiefs now in the lead, the Raiders had to go down the field and put some more points up, but Geno Smith had other plans, throwing an interception that not only turns the ball over, but goes all the way back to the crib for 6, officially putting an end to this game, as the Raiders now lose their 3rd straight game, 2 out of 3 to the Chiefs. And although Ashton was disappointed about the loss, he felt pretty good about the game that he had played, and he knew that his team would bounce back eventually. And eventually would come the following week in the form of a 24-0 ass kicking against the Commanders. A win that actually puts the Raiders in great position to potentially make the playoffs. Unfortunately, a 27-6 loss against the Broncos was doing them no favors. And this had to be a game where the Raiders were playing from behind the entire time, because I don't know how Ashton Jeanty would ever only have 6 carries. But it was all good though, man. Ashton Jeanty continued to work hard because he knew he had to stay locked in. He had a feeling that his team would need him in big moments like the following week against the New England Patriots. We're late in the fourth quarter, down by 7 points. Ashton Jeanty is out there coming up with a reception that gets his team across the goal line for a touchdown, putting up some points that now gives his team the chance to kick a field goal and send this game into overtime. But after the New England Patriots call a timeout, I guess the Raiders coaches had changed their mind and decided that they were going to go for 2 to try to win it all. And all they did was just hand the ball off to Ashton Jeanty, who takes it around the edge and dives across the goal line for a score, getting the 2-point conversion in the final moments of this game, allowing the Raiders to put up another win on the season, as the Raiders would go on to squeak this game out 29-28. And at this point in the season, man, Ashton Jeanty is actually 2nd in the league in rushing yards. He has been absolutely incredible for a rookie, and he still has his team in position to make the playoffs. And against the Indianapolis Colts, their chances would increase, as Ashton Jeanty was coming up with some more big plays to get his team across the goal line for a touchdown, ultimately doing enough to give the Raiders another win on the year. And this was actually another big game from Ashton Jeanty, as he had over 80 yards rushing and almost 70 yards receiving. The Raiders would go on to beat the Giants the following week, which meant that now they were heading into the last game of the regular season. And with there still being home field advantage to fight for, the Raiders knew they had to keep Ashton locked in and ready to go for their final game of the season, as they were heading on the road to face off against the divisional rival, the Los Angeles Chargers. And in a game where neither offense was really able to get much going throughout the entire contest, that basically meant that any points that were scored mattered a lot. So in the fourth quarter, after they hand the ball off to Ashton and he breaks free, just zooming his way past the entire defense for a touchdown. At this point, it looked like Ashton Jeanty had not only put this game away, but helped punch the Raiders' ticket to the NFL playoffs, as they close out the regular season with a 13-7 victory against their division rival. And after finishing out the year strong with another solid performance, Ashton is hoping to keep that momentum going into the postseason. And now taking a look at his season stats, Ashton Jeanty was not only 2nd in the league in rushing, but he was top 6 in rushing touchdowns, doing enough to earn him 3rd place in the Offensive Player of the Year vote, and easily established himself as the Offensive Rookie of the Year. So far throughout his rookie season, Ashton Jeanty is exactly as advertised coming out of college, and the best part about it is that he was only getting better. But now at this point, he was more focused on trying to get the Raiders their first playoff victory since 2002. But they would be in great position to do so because somehow after grabbing the 2 seed, they are now heading into a matchup at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now in the game against Pittsburgh early on, Ashton Jeanty had no problem helping the Raiders get downfield, coming up with a reception and ultimately getting them down to the goal line, where on this 3rd and 4, Ashton Jeanty would get stopped, but the coaches would not give up right there apparently, because they would decide to go for it on 4th down and give it right back to Ashton Jeanty, who would dive across the goal line for a score, putting up some points that gave the Raiders the lead, and it turns out that's all they would need, as even though throughout the rest of the game Ashton Jeanty was getting clobbered in the backfield, with the Steelers not being able to do much on offense, the Raiders had already done enough to send themselves to the next round, coming up with a low-scoring 7-3 victory. But that was all good though, man, because a win is a win, and at this point it looks like they might have a little bit of a tougher matchup, because Ashton Jeanty was leading the Raiders into a game against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, where they were leading the Bengals into Las Vegas to try and stop Ashton from making the AFC Championship. Now unfortunately for the Raiders, this was another game where their offense was struggling greatly. Luckily though, neither was the Bengals. And now by the fourth quarter, Ashton would start saying hey, to not only move the chains on 4th down, but give his team some life. They got to this 3rd down and 9 where they just needed to get into field goal range, and it turned out to be Brock Bowers coming up with a big time catch downfield, putting his team in position to kick a field goal with time winding down. And after Daniel Carlson makes a kick with 4 seconds left, the Las Vegas Raiders are finally going back to the AFC Championship. The Las Vegas Raiders have won back-to-back single-digit score games, and Ashton Jeanty did a good job contributing to the Raiders getting back to a game that they have not played in since 2002. But this next matchup would definitely be their toughest one of the season, as they were heading on the road to face off against Lamar Jackson and the number 1 seed Baltimore Ravens. Now early on in this game, the Raiders would find themselves down 14-0, but Ashton was doing everything he could to change that. With under 2 minutes left before halftime, he went out there and caught a pass that brought the team down to the goal line. And it was just a play later they gave him the ball and he punched his way across for a touchdown, putting up a score that he hoped would give his team some life. But by the fourth quarter, the Raiders were now down by 2 possessions, and it seemed like the only thing going for them was the fact that they had Ashton Jeanty on the team. And after a drive that took way too long for the Raiders to get down the field and across the goal line for a score, they ultimately did not do enough to get back to the Super Bowl. As with a 21-18 loss against the Baltimore Ravens, this would officially put an end to Ashton Jeanty's rookie year. And unfortunately, he would finish with probably one of the worst games of his season. But it was all good though, man, because at the end of the day, Ashton Jeanty went on to go win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And even though he would go on to lose to the eventual Super Bowl champs, he felt great about leading the Raiders to the AFC Championship anyway. And with him also finishing second place in rushing yards, he just felt more motivated and knew that he had something bigger to strive for going forward throughout his career. But this was Ashton Jeanty's rookie year in the NFL. And if you want to see more Ashton, or if you want to see me put another rookie in the NFL, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also, be sure to comment down below what else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope all of your NFL teams had a great NFL draft, and other than that, I'm going to catch you guys next time.